Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Bala Girivana Dari Jaya Gopijana Gopijana Bala Girivana Dari Yasoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yasoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvajakacharya Asutara Satasisi Mad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai All glories to the assembled devotees All glories to the assembled devotees All glories to the assembled devotees All glories Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Glories of Srila Prabhupada Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So we're reading from Madhya Leela, chapter 22. Is that right? Text 35. Is that correct? Is that what it says there? 2235? 135. Chapter 22. Yes?
Yes.
135. Ah. So Madhya Leela, chapter 22, text 135, the process of devotional service. In Vrindavan, we have Chaitanya Charitamrita classes every Monday morning. So here I say, you do this every Sunday morning?
Yes.
Very nice. Eka ange siddhi paila. Bahu bhakta gana. Ambarishadi bhaktera. Bahu anga sadhana. Eka ange siddhi paila. Bahu bhakta gana. Ambarishadi bhaktera. Bahu anga sadhana. Eka ange siddhi paila. Bahu bhakta gana. Ambarishadi bhaktera. Bahu anga sadhana.
Ekange siddhi paila. Bahu bhakta gana.
Bahu bhakta gana.
Ambarishadi bhaktera.
Ambarishadi bhaktera.
Bahu anga sadhana.
Bahu anga sadhana.
Ekange siddhi paila.
Eka ange siddhi paila.
Bhakta gana.
Bahu bhakta gana.
Ambarishadi bhaktera.
Ambarishadi bhaktera.
Bahu anga sadhana.
Bahu anga sadhana. Any ladies?
Eka ange siddhi paila.
Eka ange siddhi paila.
Bahu bhakta gana.
Bahu bhakta gana.
Ambarishadi bhaktera.
Ambarishadi bhaktera.
Bahu anga sadhana.
Bahu anga sadhana.
Eka ange siddhi paila. Bahu bhakta gana. Ambarishadi bhaktera.
Ambarishadi bhaktera.
Bahu anga sadhana.
Bahu anga sadhana.
Eka, I'm sorry, Eka ange, by one portion. Siddhi, perfection. Paila, achieved. Bahu, many. Bhaktagana, devotees. Ambarisha Adi, King Ambarish Maharaj and others. Bhaktera, of devotees. Bahu Anga Sadhana, execution of many processes of devotional service. Translation. There are many devotees who execute only one of the 9 processes of devotional service. Nonetheless, they get ultimate success. Devotees like Maharaj Ambarisha execute all 9 items, and they also get ultimate success. Okay, and there's no purport. Okay. Do we stop there, or do we read the next verse?
And it's up to
We can,
you. If you
we'll,
like, you can read
we
more.
can, okay. Well, you know what I'm going to do already, so we can stop here. Okay. So, of course, okay, thank you. Umagana timirandasya ganandana salakaya chaksuram malitam jena tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Svaya Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadandikam Vanchakalpa Tirubhisha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasri Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So of course this verse and what it alludes to, we all, I'm sure, familiar with the 9 processes of devotional service as spoken by Prahlad Maharaj. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Bandhanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam. So, so we're all very fortunate, of course. Srila Prabhupada has given us all 9 processes of devotional service. I was thinking this morning, we had our ride back in the car yesterday, coming back from the program. Everyone had a nice time yesterday. I know I had a very nice time yesterday. I was even thinking how Prabhupada went to that place. We know nothing happens by accident for a devotee, even for us. Nothing but happens by accident for anyone, but for a pure devotee who's completely engaged 24 hours in devotional service, he's doing everything according to the will of Krishna, the will of the Supreme Lord. So somehow or other, whatever we may see as external circumstances, Prabhupada arrived at that place. He stayed there in that place. We saw that one girl, she said she was there. As a child, she said she was staying there. How many times? 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. She's a devotee. Just by Prabhupada's being in that place. And this, of course, is what I've been emphasizing, the importance of these tirthas. Damodar Prabhu has done such a nice job arranging this festival. And in the process, he also became very ecstatic. And it's one of the 9 processes, remembering. As he was doing it, he was just remembering what Srila Prabhupada had done. Going here, the other night we went to the Credit Suisse Bank, which I heard just went bankrupt or something a week ago. As many banks are. The whole world's going to go bankrupt. It's already bankrupt without Krishna consciousness. This is just a gradual process of what's going on. But for us, our process is remembering. Me in particular. All I speak is my remembrances of Srila Prabhupada and what he did, how he engaged us in devotional service. Hearing, chanting, remembering. How was Prabhupada hearing? He was always chanting to us, giving classes, doing bhajans. So what was his hearing? For me, I told you, one of my very first services to Srila Prabhupada, before I became his personal servant, was reading Krishna book to him in the garden in Los Angeles, New Dwarka. He was hearing Krishna book. All we knew at that time, 1971, we had first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam, 3 volumes, first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. We had Nectar of Devotion. Prabhupada did everything so expertly. We know he left India after completing first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. I was at that place, Radha Damodar Temple, where he compiled those 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam. I see upstairs in the room, you have the original Srimad Bhagavatams. Prabhupada told me there that he put everything in there in order to become Krishna conscious. Whatever was required, he said he put in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, because he was unsure what the future would be for him. He didn't know if he would be completing all 12 cantos, if he would be completing Srimad Bhagavatam. So he wanted to see that everyone had the opportunity to understand the process and to become Krishna conscious. So everything he put in there. He said that place, Radha Damodar Temple. How many of you have been to Radha Damodar Temple? Okay. The rest of you have to go there sometimes. Because Prabhupada said this place, Radha Damodar Temple, where we still have his rooms, his 2 rooms are there, he said it's very special. He said it's that place is where the Krishna consciousness movement began. And he said his rooms at Radha Damodar Temple, he said it's the hub. You all know what a wheel in the center of the wheel is the hub. He said, so those rooms are the hub of the wheel of the spiritual world, the very center of the spiritual world in his rooms. He said, because the Krishna consciousness movement began here by the mercy of Srila Rupa Goswami. When Prabhupada was doing his translating work, he would sit at that spot. All of you should have seen that picture. You see that one spot with the jolly windows where Prabhupada would look through there and he could see Srila Rupa Goswami's samadhi. It looks very, very different there than when Prabhupada was there 50 years ago. But still, Srila Rupa Goswami's samadhi, Bhajan Kutir, is there. And Prabhupada took his inspiration from that place. But the hearing, Prabhupada was also hearing. As I said, one of the first things, and for me it was very surprising. Prabhupada would have devotees read to him. So he would have us read Krishna book. Of course, Prabhupada once said he was on the airplane, and myself and Pradyumna were sitting beside him. Pradyumna's his Sanskrit editor. For the whole time Prabhupada was present, Pradyumna was there as the Sanskrit editor. And Prabhupada was reading his Bhagavad Gita. And he looked at us and he said, what author do you know who reads his own books once they're finished? Of course, it was a rhetorical question. And we just looked at him. He said, no one. He said, as soon as an author finishes his book, he never looks at it again. He said, but I'm here reading this Bhagavad Gita. Why? And again, we just looked at him. He said, because these are not my words. They're Krishna's words. And he would read his books. So in this way, reading, this is our hearing. Prabhupada stressed the importance of hearing, of reading his books. So many times, devotees will come up to me and say they're having some difficulty, they're having some doubts, how to deal with it. And I was saying, Prabhupada always gave responses to these questions in the same way. You chant your rounds, you follow the regulative principles, you read my books. This is the way we clear doubts, reading his books. This is how we associate with the pure devotee. This is how we associate with Srila Prabhupada. We always chant that, right? The Guru, he lives. The pure devotee, he lives in his words. He's always present. So Srila Prabhupada, I would find him reading his books. I was telling Prabhu in the car, we had such a nice ride back. It was so nice being with the devotees. The train, it was a little more difficult on the way to have any kind of communication, but in a nice little car coming back, Mike driving very carefully, zigzagging along. We were talking Krishna conscious topics the whole time. We were having this association, sadhu sangha, this association, very important. But I was saying how Prabhupada, he spent his schedule. This is what we all have, our schedules. And we're all very busy. Hopefully, I see in this temple every morning, it's always so nice to see everyone here every morning for Mangal Artik, for Guru Puja, for class, everyone engaged in service. So it's very nice to have a temple like this. Everyone has to be busy. And no one can not be there today. Otherwise your service won't go on. There's no one to replace you. This is Krishna's arrangement. Keep everyone very busy in Krishna consciousness. Imagine Srila Prabhupada, how busy he was. I was with him 24 hours a day. And sometimes he seemed like he had all the time in the world. He was running the entire society. He made it look so easy, effortless. I can understand now. It was effortless because he was always happy. He was always enthusiasm to do his service. He was never struggling. He never made it seem like, oh, today I have to do this. I'm tired. We've just traveled to 5 different places in the last 2 weeks. I can't go to the morning program. No, every day he did it. He said by devotional service, he said one doesn't become tired. He said the more service you do, the more enthusiastic you become. I'm still hoping to attain to that platform. Enthusiastic. There's one story, my godbrother, you should all know him by name, Guru Kripa. He's up there, the back of the temple in Vrindavan. He gave the most donations to help Prabhupada build that temple. So he was in Hawaii. Prabhupada liked Hawaii very much. We were talking about that as well. Prabhupada said, if there's heaven on earth, it's in Hawaii. Such a nice place. And Ambarish Prabhu, we're talking Ambarish Maharaj here. We have our own Ambarish Maharaj. He gave everything to Krishna. Ambarish said to me one day, he said, you want to remember Krishna? You give all your money to him. You'll remember him all the time. You'll always be thinking, what are all these people doing with this money for Krishna? Very easy. You give everything to Krishna, you're going to remember him. And that's what our Ambarish Prabhu has done, and he's still doing to this day. And he's very happy doing it. I remember when we were there for the chakra installation, he gave a talk. And he was, over the years, he became not just giving his money, but he became very much involved more and more in the management. It's one thing to give your money. To get involved in management, that's a whole other level of service. Not so easy. But he began doing it more and more, became the chairman. Of course, he was always chairman, I believe, but he got more involved in the specifics of what's going on. And I remember him standing up there. He said, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And he said, I'm good at it. He was pleased with how he was able to do his service. This is a devotee. He does his service and he's very happy when he sees he can do it very nicely. My wife there, Vishaka, she cleans all the silver for the deities in Vrindavan. You can't imagine how much silver there is. We don't even let anyone know how much silver there is. How many plates we have for the deities. So many big, big silver plates, silver katoris, all the artik paraphernalia, all of their crowns, so much silver. And she's become crazy, cleaning for Krishna, polishing the silver. We go there, sometimes I help a little bit. And in the morning when they open the curtains, sometimes my godbrothers are there and I'll say, you see that crown? I polished that crown. This is devotee, happily doing his service. Not that it's, as Prabhupada told me, he said, servant means, he said there's 3 kinds of servants. He says, first-class servant. He called me in his room in Vrindavan just to tell me. I offered my obeisances, and I'm sure I was lacking as a servant. He said, first-class servant, he knows what to do without being asked. First-class servant. You don't even have to be told what to do. Automatically you're doing. He said, second class, you tell him what to do and he does it. You're only second class. If you have to be told what to do, that's not first class, just because, okay, I'll do it. You should already know. And by association, over the course of time, you do know. With Prabhupada, I knew, because he was very, very regulated. So I knew what to do. His massage, every day, same time. One time he rang the bell. I came in, it's around 11:30 in the morning. For the obeisances, I sat up, he looked at me, he said, so you can give me massage now? I said, yes, Prabhupada. I said, I'm just waiting. But it was already the time. It was his way of saying, it's time. Why aren't you here? You should already know what to do. See, that's first class. Second class, he told me, now you can give me massage. Third class, he said, you do it begrudgingly. Third class servant. Where you don't do it at all. He said, that's third class servant. Sometimes I remember with Prabhupada, one day, this was in Juhu, when he was staying in the flats. And he was up on the second floor. So there are no screens. In India they say jolly. No screens were in there. And Juhu was filled with mosquitoes. Big mosquitoes. And rats. So those mosquitoes, of course, as soon as it becomes dark, you have your lights on, mosquitoes will come into the house. So one of my services was every day before the sun goes down, you close the windows. Doesn't matter how hot it might be, you have to close the windows. There was no air conditioning, but in order that the mosquitoes don't come in, you have to close the windows. So that was one of my services. So one day I'm sitting there in the hallway, in the front room where I would sit outside Prabhupada's room, and my god sister Palika came in. She would cook for Prabhupada there. And she started closing the windows. I said, Palika, what are you doing? I said, that's my service. You don't give your service to someone else. It's very precious to have some service. Why are you closing? I said, I do that. She said, Prabhupada told me to do it. She said, sometimes you forget. Oh, when I heard that, I became so upset. He didn't chastise me, but he told her, instead he just told her, close the windows. Sruti Kirti, he doesn't close them. I could imagine what he said to her. That was it. I never forgot again to close those windows. It was my service as his personal servant. In Vrindavan, he would call me into the room. I'd offer obeisances, and he'd go, that meant turn on the fans. He didn't say turn on the fans. He would just look. Sometimes I'd go in and he'd go, it meant open the curtains. There's French doors in his rooms. He'd open the curtains. Or if he looked at them and they were open, it meant close the curtains. So this is how he did things. My business was to heat up the water. Imagine in Mayapur, in Vrindavan, 1972, 1973. Now we have 24-hour electricity. Electricity goes off sometimes 10, 20 times a day. The generator goes on. So you always have electricity. It wasn't like that in those days when Prabhupada was with us. In Mayapur, when they were building, Prabhupada had his rooms. On the end was a bathroom. It's a big bathroom for all 4 rooms, but it was exclusively for Prabhupada. Had 4 toilet stalls, 4 sinks, so it was very big. So one of the things I had to do was heat up his water for a bath. he would, right after massage, noontime, he would take bath, 1 bucket of water. And it had to be tepid, warm. After he had his heart attack, his stroke, in 1967, the doctor said to him, no cold bath for your heart, too fragile, very dangerous. So he followed that instruction. Prabhupada also followed instructions. He heard outside the door, after he became ill, Brahmananda, Gargamuni were there outside Prabhupada's room, and the doctor was talking to him. And he said, your leader, he said he prays too much. He said he should exercise more. He should be going on a walk every day. Prabhupada overheard him. Ramananda, he describes this doctor as he was an alcoholic guy. But he was a doctor, he knew his business. Prabhupada overheard it. From that time, every morning he took his morning walk. That was the whole point there, going to San Moritz, was because of how humorous it was. I saw that sliding glass door. Prabhupada was going to go on that morning walk. Might have been 10 degrees below zero. Wind was blowing, snow's blowing. He was going to go on his morning walk. He said, I told you, those 3 things keep me alive. He said, my morning walk, my massage, and my Ayurvedic medicine. When he said Ayurvedic medicine, he took 1 item. It's still available, you can see it, you can Google it and find it, Yogendra Ras. Yogendra Ras was this little pinkish colored, saffron colored pills. And every other day, he would take 2 of those little pills in a mortar pestle. So I would grind them in there with black cardamom seed and a little 1/4 teaspoon of honey, mix it all up. First thing in the morning before the morning walk, he would take that every other day. I'd put it on his desk. And sometimes I'd be going back and forth doing things and I would see him. And he would use, I don't know which is called the mortar, the pestle. He would scrape it all onto the pestle. And it was only this big, very small mortar pestle. We kept in his white bag. That was one of the items in his white bag. So he would, and then he would get the mortar. He would, so it was very expensive. It had gold dust in it and pearl dust in it. And he only trusted it. Prabhupada didn't have a lot of faith in anything in this material world, but he considered one pharmacy was trustworthy. Wherever he was, if he was running down, it would get mailed to him from India to different parts. And there's typical Indian packages covered in cloth, all sewn up. You know, you'd see the address written on there. And they'd send it to him wherever he was. And that interesting, if you look at what the medicine is for, I believe there's a few things it was for. One of them was for seizures, epilepsy, seizures. But that's also a symptom of ecstasy, to have these things. But it was also energizer, gold, pearl, very good for you, these things. The pharmacy was Sadhana Asadalaya, was the pharmacy he got it from. And that was another thing sometimes I would forget in the morning. It was the simplest thing in the world every other day. But sometimes being with Prabhupada, doing anything, you could completely forget. You could forget anything, especially if he started chastising you. You'd have nothing you could say. You'd go completely, if you just wanted to jump into the Jamuna, jump into the Ganga, finish your life if he chastised you. But his business was hearing. So I said in his schedule, morning, we all know Prabhupada's morning. Well, his morning started just after midnight. Midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, translating. And he'd do that right up until he's getting ready for the morning walk. Sometimes he'd translate, then he'd stop. He'd chant japa sitting in his place. And then he'd get ready for the morning walk. I said I had to get datung, his toothbrush, twig. Toothbrush was a twig. Every day fresh twig. Hopefully it's neem. Mango is good. They all have antiseptic properties. Neem, mango, eucalyptus. Down in Australia you would always get eucalyptus twigs. But they had to be there. See, and as a servant, you had to know what to do. Every day you're doing the same thing. Every day we're doing the same thing. One doesn't need to be asked. Sometimes he'd walk past my room. Datung. That's all you would hear. He'd just say one word. In Juhu in the afternoon, he would take a nap after lunch. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So I was going with the schedule. So after translating, chanting, he gets ready, freshen up, then he'd go on the morning walk. Morning walk was always at least an hour, hour and a half. And his disciples, some of them wouldn't go on the morning walk because they would get tired. Even some in his entourage. Myself, I remember morning walks, especially in Juhu. Because Juhu, you just walk back and forth on the beach, just by the temple there. It was a block from the beach. And he had 3 basic places he would stop and turn around and walk back. And when you're walking with him, you know, if he doesn't stop at the first place, you're, uh-oh, this is a long morning walk. If he doesn't stop at the second place, it's, this is a really long morning walk. And go to the next place, because then you had to walk all the way back from that place. And we would be getting tired. And Prabhupada walked fast. That morning walk kept them alive. He said everything was for that circulation within the body. I told you massage. He said many things while I was massaging him. One time he said, you massage me until I get tired, not until you get tired. So that was one thing you didn't assume when to stop. Other things you should know what to do. Massage, you massage that one spot on his body until you got a nod. If he was massaging your head, you keep massaging, massaging, massaging. And you never stop until he went. Then you go to the next spot and you massage his back. He told me, you can massage my back as hard as you like. I was 22 years old, had kind of broad shoulders. I was thin, but I was strong. So that was a challenge. What do we say? You throw out the gauntlet, you know? He said, as hard as you like, you can massage my back. Because I was every day massaging, and I'm thinking, you know, this is a good spot, a good amount of pressure. But he said that. I started massaging harder and harder. He's sitting on the floor on a straw mat. And Prabhupada, he was bigger than the biggest, but he was very tiny when you first met him. Because we all imagined he was huge. And then you would see this sweet, beautiful person. But he was not very tall or anything. And I'm massaging harder and harder, and he's just sitting there like nothing is going on, like he's chanting japa, or is just sitting in front of me, and I'm pushing and pushing. And I'm, all right, and I'm pushing harder. He never said that's hard enough. He actually defeated me, because as hard as I could do, he's sitting there like I wasn't doing anything. And neither could I move his body. How much did he weigh? He didn't weigh very much. But I'm pressing and pressing. This is mystical activities. And he would do these things just to show you he's not an ordinary person. Anyway, I didn't break a sweat. There were different things. Prabhupada said, anyone can massage. When I first became his servant, Kirtanananda introduced me. He said, Sruti Kirti is going to be your servant. He said he's a very good cook, but he doesn't know how to massage. Prabhupada said anyone can massage. But I found out not anyone could massage. If you had rough palms, you couldn't massage him. Your hands had to be very nice and soft. If you had sweaty palms, you couldn't massage him. And if you massaged too easy, he said like a girl, you couldn't massage him. It was vigorous massage. So, but that was his introduction to me. So, class, we know, getting back from morning walk, we have our Guru Puja, greeting the deities. And we greeted the deities whenever Prabhupada arrived back from the morning walk. You can imagine the pujaris. Sometimes maybe he'll arrive back at 7 o'clock. Sometimes 7:15. Might be 7:30. So they had to be ready for the earliest time and then continue with their service. They would get back, then deity greeting. Then he would give class. And then after class, breakfast was there. And I also learned, before I became his servant, as I said in Los Angeles, I was going every day. I got to go in the garden. And a few times Kirtanananda brought us up to Prabhupada's room after class, myself and Kuladri. And it was my first time in Prabhupada's room. And of course, Prabhupada went up. We followed him up the stairs. It was a white tile floor, very shiny. They were polishing it every day. And we offered obeisances. And this is my, again, first time being in Prabhupada's room in front of him. And I remember my palms were sweaty. We offered obeisances, and Kirtanananda said, Prabhupada, these are two of the brahmacharis from New Vrindavan. And Prabhupada's very nice. And he looked at Kuladri. So what is your name? He said, Kuladri Das. Then he looked at me. He said, what is your name? And nothing came out of my mouth. And I heard Kirtanananda say, that's Sruti Kirti, Srila Prabhupada. He said, oh, very nice boys. We were always very nice boys. Prabhupada's all very nice boys doing service. So then, that morning, his servant came up, and he had a plate, Prabhupada's plate, with cut fruits in his hand. And he came in, we went over to the table, called Choki, put the plate down, and Prabhupada yelled at him. He said, why weren't you at class? So that was my first experience in the duties of personal servant. Why weren't you at class? And he said, oh, Prabhupada, I was preparing your breakfast. He said, cutting fruits? He said, anyone can do that. He said, your business is to be at class every morning. And I told you, I was at class every morning. Never missed the morning walk. Never missed the class. In Juhu, I was on a morning walk. The sun's coming up. Shyama Sundar, we read from Shyama Sundar's book. He looked at me and started laughing. He said, oh boy, do you have jaundice? My eyes were yellow. And I knew I didn't feel very good. Jaundice makes you very, very weak. But I was there on the morning walk. And then we get back to the temple. So now that was the big news. Prabhupada's servant has jaundice. Amongst, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he was there. He said, you have jaundice. He said, you can't cook for Prabhupada. You can't touch his plates. He said, very contagious. He said, Prabhupada could get jaundice. I said, oh. For me, it was all new. I only knew the analogy we would hear Prabhupada say in class, right? Jaundice. What is the cure for jaundice? Sugarcane juice. That's a very nice thing when you're in India, getting sugarcane juice. You can drink it every day. It's very tasty, very nice. But it's not sweet. When you have jaundice, it's not sweet. You don't taste the sweetness. But you drink it, then gradually that will cure your jaundice. So I went into Prabhupada's room, offered obeisances. Srila Prabhupada, I said, I have jaundice. He said, oh? I said, Prabhupada was very funny. Oh, he said? He said, I said, yes. And I said, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, he told me that I shouldn't be serving you. I shouldn't cook, shouldn't bring you your plates, I shouldn't do anything because it's contagious, very highly contagious. Prabhupada looked at me. He said, you can do your service? I said, yes, Prabhupada. He said, just do your service. Oh, he said, just do your service. This is our business. Doesn't matter what's going on in your mind, what difficulties you're having, what's going on in relationship. Just do your service. That's what always he said to me. Just do your service. And then I said, he looked at me. He said, what are the symptoms? I said, well, your eyes become yellow. He knew the symptoms. He's asked, Prabhupada was a pharmacist. Prabhupada was everything. He knew everything. But he said to me, what are the symptoms? I said, your eyes turn yellow. I said, and your urine becomes brown. I said, and you become very weak. He looked, he said, perhaps I have jaundice. 2 years later, Brahmananda had jaundice. Me, innocent, forgetful. My wife knows I forget everything all the time. I go into Prabhupada's room. I said, Prabhupada, Brahmananda has jaundice. He looks at me, he said, what are the symptoms? I tell him the symptoms. He said, perhaps I have jaundice. His point was, everyone in the material world, this is how we feel. We feel fatigued, we're tired, right? This is it. The only cure is devotional service. The first day I became his servant, we went from Pittsburgh, we flew to Dallas, Texas. 3 days we spent in Dallas, Texas. During those 3 days, he showed me how to use the cooker, famous cooker. I cooked, every time I cooked lunch for Prabhupada, I used the cooker, hundreds of times. And the cooker never failed me. I said at that program, I said the cooker was my best friend, because without it, I could have never prepared lunch for Prabhupada. So it was just after lunch, Prabhupada took a nap. Now for me, of course, no one took a nap in the temple. That meant Maya. Sleeping is Maya. So it's about, Prabhupada had lunch, and about a half hour later, he rings the bell. This is literally my second day of serving him. So I go in the room. The door was there. I go in the room and I offer my obeisances right next to him. I wasn't in front of the desk. I was right next to him, right here. And I sat up. He looked at me. He said, Sruti Kirti, your name is too long. He said, from now on I'll call you Shruto. I said, yes, Prabhupada. He never called me Shruto again. But he said that. And then he looked at me. He said, do you take a nap after lunch? I said, no, Prabhupada. He said, that meant you weren't allowed to take a nap. We got up from Mangalarti. We knew sleeping more than 6 hours, Maya. You get up after 4 o'clock, Maya. Anytime you're sleeping during the day, Maya. I said the only naps we took were during Bhagavatam class. We'd sit in class. We'd take naps. Temple commander in some temples had a spray gun. He couldn't wait to see somebody nod their head, start squirting you. I saw a person giving class, nod out, giving a class. So we did our best to stay awake. So he said that to me. I said, no, Prabhupada. I thought he was accusing me of napping. And then he looked at me. He said, I'm an old man. He said, when you're old, you can't sleep too much at any one time. He said, so sometimes I take a nap after lunch. And I just looked at him. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. But I thought, who is this person? He's sleeping 1-2 hours at night, translating, traveling around the world 14 times, stopping at all these places, going into blizzards, all for us. And he said that to me. But what I realized, I'll tell you, the first day as a servant, I had no idea what I was doing. I told you, Samba Sundar told me, Prabhupada rings the bell, you go in the room. Never secretary, you, the servant, that's your service. Prabhupada sits in the car, you sit beside him, he said. Prabhupada's on the plane, you sit beside him. And I'm thinking, this sounds really wonderful. You're always next to Prabhupada. Scary, but wonderful. They go together. Those two things go together with Prabhupada. So I'm in Pittsburgh. Prabhupada's in his sitting room. It was a temporary facility while he was there. He was there just one night. I think he stayed one night. And he's in his sitting room, and I'm next door in his bedroom. What was his bedroom? And I don't even know what to do. I'm a new servant. There was no handbook. You know, this is how to be a personal servant. There's no retreats, personal servant retreat. And now we have a retreat for everything. We have GBC, learning how to be a GBC. We have Diksha retreats, learn how to take initiation. So many retreats. Japa retreats, level 1, level 2, level 3. Japa retreats. We had no retreats, no handbooks, just word of mouth, do this. That was this is your service, do it. And you figure out how to do it. Many times, devotees, a few times in Vrindavan, young brahmacharis would come in the room. Young men were always minds agitated. And the brahmachari comes in, Prabhupada, he said, how do I control my mind when I'm chanting japa? Prabhupada said, there's no question of mind. He said, you chant with the tongue, you hear with the ears. He went just like that. You chant with your tongue, so he just bypassed that area. Chant with the tongue, you hear with the ears. He said, there's no question of mind. I said, the shortest japa retreat ever. Now they fill your mind with so many things you're supposed to do. You even forget how to chant japa. It's very simple. You chant with the tongue, you hear with the ears. You concentrate. That's japa. So I'm sitting in the room and I'm looking through Prabhupada's suitcase, just familiarizing myself. And I look and I see he's got a few kurtas, 2 dhotis, a sweater, a chadar, a hat. Sometimes he had that big saffron coat that he wore there at San Moritz. And the bell rang. It was the first time he rang the bell for me. And I ran into the room. I offered obeisances and I sat up and looked at him. I said, yes, I didn't know what to expect. I said, yes, Prabhupada? I said, what can I do? He said, nothing. He said, I just wanted to see how fast you were. As soon as he said it, all my anxiety went away. I saw that smile that I had seen with Prabhupada reading Krishna book, his laughing, his smiling. And he just put me at rest that quickly. First time he rang the bell. And I'm still sitting there. I said, is that all? Yes. I said, should I go now? He said, okay. So then I went back to the room. He literally rang the bell just to see, but just to put me at ease. So now the next day he does the same thing. He rings the bell. I'm going to call you Shruto. Imagine saying, Jaipataka saying your name's too long. And the devotees, they have names this long. They're like whole slokas. You have a whole sloka as your name. Sruti Kirti. He always called me Sruti Kirti. Not to me usually. He would say to others, where's Sruti Kirti? Sometimes I wasn't around. Gone for a few minutes. But then he said that. I'm an old man. Imagine Prabhupada saying such a thing. But then I saw, again, who is this person who can be so humble? He walks out of the room, thousands of people are offering dandavats. Everyone doing anything just to see him for a second, for a moment. And he was this nice when you had that personal association. We say, the only reason I'm here is due to that association. I have no qualifications to be here, but I do have my memories, my remembrances of Srila Prabhupada. And that keeps me here. Now he's put me in Vrindavan. Never imagined being in his home. He's given me his home. He's given me service in his home, a place to live in his home. He'll do this for everyone. He does it for all of you. Just do your service. We don't have to worry what's going to happen when I get old. Am I going to be taken care of? All these things, you do your service, everything will happen just as it's supposed to. This is Srila Prabhupada. So today, I guess we'll stop here. I have 2 programs this afternoon. So whatever, I think one is at 12:45. We have a class for Nepalese. Sri Lankan. And then we have the other feast later on. I said that's very nice. I remember being in Hong Kong. They had a Saturday feast and a Sunday feast. This one was for the local Chinese people, and the other one was for Indian devotees. Because every culture is a little different. Some cultures a lot different. So to accompany, to take care of each person, very nice. But again, I see here in this temple, very, very nice temple. We were a little in anxiety, long flight to get here, didn't know what to expect, but it couldn't be any better. And we feel very happy to be here. And we're hoping we can come again in the future, sometime in the future, if you're kind enough. So anyone have any questions? Comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, thank you for your lecture. And when you were Prabhupada's personal servant, how you deal with your sadhana, your personal practice? Because sometimes it's very difficult.
Yes, sometimes it's very difficult. It was very difficult. For Prabhupada, it seemed, like I said, it was effortless amongst this travel, everything he maintained. But myself and others, I saw we would struggle with changes, constant changes, one place to the next. He would see to it. He would do his best to see that we were following. So we were chastised mostly. He would ring his bell, usually in the afternoon. Some of us, all of us, we would be sleeping after long flights, time changes, as we say, jet lag was not a word, and just like impossible, we say impossible, Prabhupada said, is a word in a fool's dictionary, so is jet lag. There's no such thing as jet lag for Prabhupada. He said, I'm here, I'm up. This is how we would, just like we were just like him. He made us think that he was just like us, and of course we knew he wasn't just like us. We weren't just like him. But he made us think like that. When he was here, he made us think we could be Krishna conscious in this very lifetime and go back to Godhead in this very lifetime. He convinced us. Now people sometimes are not so sure. I heard someone wrote the other day, Prabhupada said most of my disciples said it will take 3 lifetimes to go back home, back to Godhead. I immediately put, do you have a reference for this? I never heard Prabhupada say such a thing. No reference. Heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody. Heard it from somebody. He, one day he called me into his room. Rupanuga, it was very early devotees, was in there in Los Angeles. And we're all sitting together. And Rupanuga said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, did you say that World War III was going to start? And he gave a date, in the next year or two, whatever, April 1st, 1973, so I say that. And Prabhupada said, I never said that. Then he looked at Rupanuga, he said, where did you hear this? He said, well, one devotee told me that Sruti Kirti said, that you said. And Prabhupada looked at me, he said, did you say that? I said, I never said anything. Prabhupada just said, just see. He said, they'll say Prabhupada said this and Prabhupada said that. He said, but unless you hear me say it, I didn't say it. One day Prabhupada rang the bell. This is a long story. I don't know if we have time for such a story. You have 10 minutes?
Yes.
You have 10 minutes? Many times he rang the bell when he knew we were sleeping. So I was with him for 8 months now. And the person who never took naps, he's taking naps. Anytime he could, he was taking a nap. He rang the bell. I eventually heard it. I was sound asleep. I was dreaming. And finally I heard the bell ringing. So I got up, I ran into the room, and I offer my obeisances, and I'm exercising my eyelids so he doesn't see how sleepy I am. And while I'm offering obeisances, he's yelling, I've been calling you for hours, ringing this bell. I sat up. And when I sat up, he looked at me. He said, why aren't you chanting? So he knew. It's not hard to know if somebody's chanting or not chanting. I was with him all the time. He knew. I wasn't chanting my rounds. And I didn't know what to say. To hear such a thing from him, he never said such a thing to anybody. He said to me, why aren't you chanting? And you know what I said? I said, Prabhupada, I'm sitting in my room all day long. That was my excuse, that I'm sitting there waiting to do something all day long. I said, so I'm not getting my rounds done. He didn't say, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You have all day, you're not getting your rounds done? He didn't say anything like that. He looked at me with concern. He said, well, what can we do? And then he said, I'm sitting here in my room all day. See, this is where now we made a comparison, like him and I are the same. He said, I'm sitting in my room all day. He said, in the morning walk, we both go out for the morning walk together. Then we come back, go to the program, and we're sitting in our rooms. So he's saying, you and me, it's the same. I said, Prabhupada, I said, you're Haridas Thakur. And he looked, he said, what are we going to do? He's going to solve it. I said, I don't know. And then he said, call Kurandar. I told you about Kurandar, those of you who remember from yesterday. Call Kurandar. Kurandar was number 1. He was a sergeant at arms or whatever, 5-star general, Kurandar. So I went across the street, I got Kurandar. I said, Prabhupada wants to see you. Kurandar was very grave. Never saw a smile on Kurandar's face. And that's, we thought, was Krishna consciousness. Krishna conscious people are grave. They don't smile. So we both go back into Prabhupada's room, offer obeisances, and sit up. And Prabhupada said, so Sruti Kirti, he's not getting his rounds done. And he says he's not getting them done because he's sitting in his room all day. He says it with a straight face. Inside he must have been laughing, but he said it with a straight face. He said, "What are we going to do?" And I look, I see Kurandar. My face, you know. He was like, in the U.S., a Marine. He was a Marine. He looked like a Marine. He was built like a Marine. He was like, so he's like, thinking. Prabhupada said, "I have an idea." He said, "So I'm translating Srimad Bhagavatam here at this desk." "Yes, Prabhupada." He said, "So I have another sitting room." He had 2 sitting rooms. One he used, one he didn't use. One he took massage in. It was the same setup, desk in front. He said, "So, can you get another dictaphone machine?" "Yes, Prabhupada." He said, "So you get a dictaphone machine." He said, "And you put it in that room." He said, "And I'll begin translating Chaitanya Charitamrita in that room." And he looked at me and he said, "Sruti Kirti," he said, "you know how to type?" I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." He said, "So every morning you come in, you take that tape from the dictaphone machine, you do the transcription." He said, "Then you'll have more service." He said, "And then you'll get your rounds done." I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." He said, "Okay." 2 hours later, we have another dictaphone machine. They weren't cheap. This was an Ur dictaphone. Ur? Grundig. Ur. Yeah, I'm looking at you, yes. An Ur, you know the dictaphone machine. An Ur dictaphone machine from Germany. They were German, very expensive. So put it on the desk. So it was there. So the next morning, we're on the morning walk. Sruti Kirti, he's chanting his rounds. He's thinking, I have to do transcription of the tapes. So by having more service, it was making me more enthused to chant rounds instead of just sitting in my room and just being spaced out. So I took the tape, morning walk, hour and a half. I got most of my rounds done. I get the other rounds done. Then I'm sitting, I have a typewriter. I got the headphones on. I'm hearing Prabhupada's voice, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And the next day, I go in, and there's no tape there. The next day, there was no tape there. But Sruti Kirti's chanting his rounds again. Why? Because Prabhupada cared so much. He didn't want to see anyone go away. Not me, not you, not anyone. So whatever he had to do to keep you, he was prepared to do it. So I just saw Prabhupada. I knew he cared for everyone. But when he did that for me, I was overwhelmed how much he cared. Sitting there, talking, making arrangements. Other times he made arrangements in India that I had oats so I could have oatmeal in the morning. Because I was always sick. He said, what do you need? And I was always thinking in a Western way. You know, I need this, I need that. So I said, oatmeal. He arranged for me to have oatmeal for breakfast every morning. And then in Juhu, I had a juicer. Because I was thinking, you know, you had fresh juice. You have no idea, eating anything without cooking in India is very, very dangerous. You might think it's healthy to have fresh this and nice fresh salads, but you don't know who cleaned it, who washed it, what water they washed it in. I'm sure all of you see videos of the street. If you buy anything on the street, you ever see how they wash the little cups and things? You wouldn't take anything. But I had a juicer. I make apple carrot juice. You know, peel everything, wash everything. And just one day Prabhupada called me at a room. He said, what is that noise? I said, oh, I had not thinking. I was right next room in the kitchen. I said, oh, Prabhupada, I said, I was making juice for myself, for my health. He yelled, he said, so much noise? He said, you have to make so much noise? I said, oh, Prabhupada, I said, I won't do it anymore. So much noise. He said, Prabhupada didn't like noise. So I left. About 10 minutes go by. He rings the bell. I think, oh no. I go in the room, I offer obeisance. he said, if that juice helps you, he said, it's okay. He said, you make your juice every day. I never made it again. And I always struggled in health in those days. Now, like I told Prabhu, you have to stay in India many, many months to acclimate yourself, your body, to all the different things that India is going to throw at you, the Vrindavan will throw at you. So yes, it was difficult maintaining a schedule with Srila Prabhupada. We maintained his schedule. So to maintain his schedule, our schedule could be completely crazy. But you got Prabhupada's mercy, so that took care of everything. We're all nothing but Prabhupada's mercy. If you think you're here because of anything you're doing, you're mistaken. We're only here due to Srila Prabhupada's mercy. And he's very, very merciful. If he sees us doing service, he'll always give facility. All right, and we can stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Sruti Kirti Prabhu ki jai.
Oh, you found the 2 books? Who are those people that grabbed those books? I'm glad. Very nice.
You want to give a signature? You want to give a signature?
Sure. So upstairs, I think I have 6 books left.
One more. No?
So,
But this is for unregistered.
so you all here have first opportunity, and then we have a few programs this afternoon. Dino. Very nice. What's today? Today 13? Okay. Hare Krishna. Yeah, you can cover it.
Ja, also wir haben es jetzt angefangen für 23. Okay, das haben wir jetzt nachher. Ja.
The temple, Prabhupada. Brahmachari, this is Brahmachari. Sannyasi, this is sannyasi dress. Sikrahastas, wear anything you want, any color you want. You should be dressed nicely. Not like hippie style, not. And he said, always have Sika, Shiva, flag, and Tosi. That's all. There's no question. Krishna, that's it. mentioned Siddha Sruti Goswami. He started Krishna West back in 1973. It's not a new thing. He has disciples all over the world. They go to the temple. His whole preaching is no temples. Everybody has to make their own temple. They use instruments, they do so many things. He has Prabhupada. The main thing is your source of information is Srila Prabhupada. It doesn't have to be. I never seen it as a battle. Krishna West, Krishna East, Krishna North, South, East, West. Krishna's everywhere. So, there's so many things. When you go on the altar, you dress. I went into Prabhupada's room one day. This is another story I didn't tell about Jagiri. He gave me beautiful, on his brahmachari, gave me dhoti, silk, polished silk. And I never used it because it was so opposite. And then we got to India. India, just to wash your clothes is a major project. So I ran out of clothes, so I finally took it out of my suitcase. I put it on, shining and everything, like silk satin. It was really beautiful. Prabhupada rang the bell. I went into the room. I offered obeisances, and I sat up. He looked at me. His eyes got really big. He said, "You look like you just came from Vaikuntha." He was very happy to see us in devotional thought. We can say we don't need him. You don't. But it pleased him. Our only business is to please him. So, there's easy ways to please him. Some ways not so easy. For some, 16 rounds might not be such an easy. But just to dress up as a devotee when people see us, we were walking around, downtown. So we were all downtown yesterday. This one family, they saw us. They saw my wife and her son. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. He was happy. But if you don't have these things, no one's going to say that to you, They may think badly, they may think nicely, but they think about Krishna, right?